Hi friends, it's Shuba. Welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you are here. I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is. It's just springtime is in the air. I just feel like January and February were just very dull months. I didn't really leave the house, maybe a few times. All I did was just sit at home, stay cozy, read, and just relax. And I just feel like I'm slowly coming out of hibernation now that it's getting warmer outside, and I am so excited for spring. But this is going to be a long video, so I'm just going to get right into it. This is going to be my February wrap up, all of the books that I read in February, and I have a list of some stats that I'd like to go over of my time for the month of February. Overall, I read 16 books, and of those 16 books, 3 of them were audio, 8 of them were owned from my physical library that I have, 3 of them were from the library that I checked out, and then 3 of them were ARCs from NetGalley that I was lucky and thankful enough to get the opportunity to read before they came out. In terms of genre, I mostly read rom-com and romance books. Surprise, surprise, if you've been following along on social media or Goodreads, I've just been reading a lot of romance books and didn't expect it because I had a full list of books that I wanted to read for my February TBR and I didn't get to all of them. And that's okay because sometimes you just need to read books that you want to read and not because you have to read. And I was talking to my sister about this too. When you feel like you're forced to read something or even do something in general, you tend to not appreciate and understand what you're doing at that period of time when you're doing it. That's how I feel about books lately. I feel like if I'm forced to read something that I'm not in the mood for or don't have that specific mindset, I don't appreciate the books as much, and it's not fair for the authors. I digress. So in terms of the genres, I read 1 romantasy, 2 thrillers, 1 historical fiction, and a few literary and contemporary fictions as well, and then 1 dystopian / sci-fi book. That is a total of over 4,000 pages. A lot of pages. I gotta say, I think I only gave 1 2-star, and that is about it. Everything was 3 and above. February was a great month for me. I read quite a few books, some of books that I was lucky to get the opportunity to read before they came out. A lot of the books were just books on my bookshelf and romance books that I never thought that I would think about wanting to read. So February was such a good reading month. Grab your beverage of choice or whatever it may be and get cozy, and let's get started and talk about the books that I read. The first book that I read is Womb City, and I'm going to put the book right here. Since I don't actually own the book, I was given the book by NetGalley to read before it came out, and I gotta say I was very impressed. It is Womb City, and Womb City is a dystopian sci-fi society story that takes place in a near futuristic Botswana. So our main character, her name is Neela, and she is a successful architect, and a lot of people know who she is. She's very well off, rich, famous, people love her. So all Neela wants is to have a child and give birth and start a family, but they have had a few miscarriages in the past. What she and her husband decide to do is go to this government owned place that houses womb incubators so you can grow a baby in a womb, essentially, hence Womb City. One night, Neela witnesses a hit and run, and she is forced to make a few decisions based on her unborn child, and these decisions really start an avalanche into something bigger, and the plot just gets wild. I swear this book was very weird and very good. Not something I normally would read, but I really enjoyed the plot line and the story structure. I thought the author did such a good job with the attention to detail and just overall storytelling in terms of a dystopian and sci-fi society. I think there's a lot that could go wrong if you don't explain things correctly, but the storytelling of futuristic Botswana and how Neela deals and also copes with these mental health issues is just very fascinating and really just so written well. This book was very different than what I normally would read because I'm all into thrillers and mystery and ghost stories, but what happens in this story is just bonkers. I really enjoyed it. I definitely felt the pain and sadness towards Neela and what she was feeling and going through, but the decisions that she made were just not ethical. And then again, I know this is not a real story, and if I were faced with these tough decisions, I'm not even sure what I would do, but part of me wonders if we are supposed to not like Neela. Overall, I just have to say that I keep thinking about this book. This was the first book that I read at the end of January, but finished it in February, and I kind of let it go since I had other books to read, but now looking back, this book was very, very good. And if you have the opportunity to read this, I definitely recommend because I loved it so much. And I would probably read it again. I think that reading it a second time would make it be even better. Sorry, Molly was barking over there earlier. This next book that I read is a very well known and popular book, and it is House of Flame and Shadow. This is the third Crescent City novel by Sarah J. Maas, and I gotta say I was not impressed by the second book at all, and you know my thoughts and feelings on this. I've mentioned it a few times. I just think that there's something about this whole series that just is not doing it for me, and the second book was not my cup of tea. But this third book was relatively, it was good. It was fun. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and it starts off right after our second book ends, and Bryce is literally and figuratively out of this world. I honestly applaud Sarah J. Maas for being able to storytell and take minor details from other series and other books and just be able to kind of add the plot to it into another story, and that's cool. I do appreciate that, and I really did like these subtle tie-ins to ACOTAR and Throne of Glass. If you did catch those, kudos to you. Those were really fun. As a big fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I believe that the multiverse is something that is real and can be done, only if it is done correctly, and Sarah J. Maas did it really well. She opened up the gates to something much greater, and I do applaud her for that. But overall, in terms of the story, I didn't like the main characters very much. I really didn't like Bryce, and I've noticed that a lot of people feel the same way too. She just felt like the villain to me. And a lot of the characters I didn't really appreciate either, except for maybe Rune and Lydia. Those were like the two characters in the one storyline that I was here for. In the end, I gave it a 4 just because the ending was nice. It was fun, but I just kept thinking, why is it 800 pages? I think it was 900 pages. Why is it so long? And she could have cut down a lot of it, and I was a little bit underwhelmed. It was a fun read though. I'm going to read all Sarah J. Maas books regardless of if they are good or not, just because I'm a big fan of her. But I think that overall this series fell a little short. That's it. This next story is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, and I was offered to read and listen to this in the audiobook format from NetGalley, and I actually gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. I did not like this story at all, and maybe it was just because I wasn't in the mood or the mindset to read it. This is a modern retelling of Carmilla, which is a 1872 Gothic vampire novella. An Education in Malice is a dual POV story about 2 girls, Carmilla and Laura, and there's 2 students at a college. This is a very character-driven story about both of them as they fight for their teacher's attention, who ends up being a little bit more than just human. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I was really bored reading this, or listening to it, which is still reading. I think I like the idea of reading this story, and it sounded really interesting to me, but fell flat. I didn't really enjoy it. If you like dark academia and slow burns, then you would probably really enjoy the story, and I would say give it a shot, but it just wasn't for me. This next story is The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, and she is a beloved historical fiction author and an author that I thoroughly enjoy. I went from reading no historical fiction books to slowly reading all of her backlog, and this story was beautiful. I ended up listening to the audiobook and reading this at the same time. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. Classic. Who would have thought? This story is about two women who are forced to house Nazi soldiers during the Nazi occupation of France. These two women are sisters and they're trying to survive the war. There are so many stories about World War II, especially from a male's point of view, and I thought this was really refreshing and beautifully written. I think that Kristin Hannah's storytelling really comes to life in this book, and she has truly blessed us with another one. And I know I'm a little bit late to the game reading this one, but I loved it and it was really good. This next story is The Murder After the Night Before by Katy Brent, and this is a dark comedy and right up my alley. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars, but now looking back to it, I should have given it a 5 out of 5. I really enjoyed it and it was so much fun. So many plots and twists and turns, and it was so fun. If you are a fan of The Flight Attendant on Max starring Kaley Cuoco, you'll probably really enjoy this story. So this is a murder mystery thriller that also has comedy in it about a girl who wakes up from a hangover, a stranger in her bed, and she finds out that her best friend is dead. And the police think that it was an accident, but our main character just knows that that's not true. So she tries to solve this murder mystery. It was just really fun and fast-paced, and even by 70% of the book, I couldn't tell you who the actual murder was. Katy Brent did such a good job. I think that everyone should read the story. I really like our main character. Her name is Molly, and she is 32 years old. She is not perfect. She doesn't have her life together, and I found her internal monologues to be very refreshing and quirky, and I would giggle with her out loud and in my head while reading this story. I thought that Molly was such a likable character, and while I was reading the story, I felt like I was in her shoes, putting on my investigative hat on, and trying to figure out who did it. This is my first Katy Brent book, and I do want to pick up more of her stories. I thought that Katy Brent's writing was so easy and fast-paced, and even though this was a murder mystery, I chuckled here and there, and I definitely recommend this story. I enjoyed it a lot. Thank you so much, NetGalley, for giving me the opportunity to read this book early. My very first Ali Hazelwood novel, and I decided to go the young adult chess route. I loved this story. I will link it up above, but I did do a vlog of reading 2 romance books, this book and the next book that I will be talking about. This is a enemies to friends to lovers story about an ex-chess player who comes out of retirement to play in the world of Queen's Gambit in a tournament one time for a charity. She picks up the games and she ends up defeating the longtime champion Nolan, who's also known as the King Killer. This story was just so cute and fast-paced, and I loved getting back into the world of chess, especially after watching Queen's Gambit, but make this a little bit more lighthearted. I definitely recommend this book if you are into romance and just want something fast-paced and to get you feeling the love again. The next book that I read is A Love Song for Ricki Wilde by Tia Williams, and I love this book so much. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars, and I would read this again. This is my very first Tia Williams book. I wish I would have read 7 Days in June, which I'm going to pick up once it's ready from the library for me to read. But I could not put this book down. So this is a magical realism book, and I did not know what to expect reading this story. The little cover sleeve of the book says, "One florist, one pianist, one love story, 100 years in the making." So this is about our main girl. Her name is Ricki Wilde, and she wants nothing more than to leave her family's business owning a funeral home. They own this huge funeral dynasty, and she wants to move and open up her own floral shop. Super cute. She mentions that she wants to spend her life living with the living than with the dead, which makes sense because funeral home, floral shop. That makes sense. One day she ends up meeting a lady named Miss Della, and Miss Della gives her the opportunity to move to New York and open up her own floral shop. And Ricki takes this. She ends up meeting a girl named Tuesday who's a TV actor and befriending her. She ends up meeting this stranger in a garden, and she is just basically fallen head over heels for him. And I'm gonna leave it at that because this was such a magical story and beautifully written, and I think Tia Williams is going to be an automatic buy for me moving forward into the future. I love this story so much. This is a love song for Harlem's rich culture and the Harlem Renaissance. It is a reminder that love spans multiple lifetimes and fairy tales do exist. This book was so lovely, and I 120% recommend this story. This next book that I read was The Fury by Alex Michaelides, and this is a thriller story about a group of friends who go to a Greek island for a weekend vacation getaway, and one of them gets murdered, and there are 6 suspects. I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed. I thought this was very fast-paced. I finished this in a day, but I thoroughly enjoyed The Silent Patient and The Maidens by this author. And this was just a little bit boring for me. It was very predictable, which is not a bad thing. I mean, sometimes you just want easy books to read, but it just fell a little bit flat. I really enjoy his writing style, and I think he creates fun and different, unique characters, but I don't know why. It wasn't as good. I gave the story a 3 out of 5 stars, and I do think that this would be a fun graphic audiobook, since you have multi-POV characters, and I think that would be really fun to listen to. I mean, I don't regret reading it. It was a good book, just not my favorite. This next book is Black Ties and White Lies by Kat Singleton, and I read this in the ebook format since it was on Kindle Unlimited. Kat Singleton is a Kansas City author, and I'm just trying to read more local authors, and I ended up going to her book signing, which was for her new book, which was so much fun. I went with some bookie friends and met some new people, and it was a good time. Definitely outside of my comfort zone, but I'm glad I went. So I do believe this is my very first adult romance, and I just didn't know what to expect. Oh my gosh. Wow, that was some hot and heavy and spicy writing in there. I finished it in a day, so you could say that I enjoyed it. This was an easy to read palette cleanser for me, and it is about a girl named Margot. She is a graphic designer for a big tech company in LA and an aspiring artist. She is kind of unfulfilled with her life, but she just needs to pay the bills. She is trying to get over her ex-boyfriend, and then one day her ex-boyfriend's older brother shows up and proposes to her to date him for a full year, and then they can break it off after. So this is a story about fake dating, but it ends up turning into something more. Or does it? You'll just have to read. It was a fun book. When looking at the characters, I do think that maybe Margot and Beck's relationship, Beck is the main male character, isn't as healthy, but then again, who am I to say? I think that he's a little bit aggressive for me and possessive, but there is consent all throughout the story, and I think that's very important, especially when you're reading stories like this. As long as they're both okay with it, I'm okay with it, and I was okay with it. The romantic tension between Margot and Beck was definitely there, and it was spicy. It was a fun read, and I do own the second book, so I will be reading it sometime. All right, this next book is To Have It to Heist by Sara Desai, and I am so sad that I didn't pick this book up sooner. This was such a good book. I own this book, and I ended up getting this book in December when I went book shopping, but I never picked it up, and I should have, but it's okay. Better late than never. This is a story about a girl named Simi. She is just working from job to job. She gets fired. She doesn't really have a home. She just seems to always be full of bad luck. This is a story about a girl named Simi who has to get a group of people together to steal a necklace from a wedding that she is planning. It sounds like a lot, and it is, but it was so well written. There's just a lot going on in there, but it was so much fun. There's also a love triangle in there. Simi goes from 0 to 100 with boys, let me tell you. She is a rock star. This was a really fun read, and I love that Sara Desai, she is a South Asian and Irish author, and I just want to support more BIPOC and South Asian authors because I'm South Asian, but I really enjoyed the story. The second book comes out this year, I believe in August, sometime, and I will be reading it, and I will not be waiting a full few months to read this book. This book was so funny. I laughed a lot, and this story is just lighthearted, but with a lot of substance. I really enjoyed Sara Desai's character build and writing style. If you like The Mindy Project and Ocean's 8, you'll probably really like this story. I had written down when I wrote my review that this is a lot like The Italian Job as well, and The Wedding Planner. So all movies that I like and enjoy and watched growing up. Definitely recommend. I had given this a 4 out of 5 stars, but I don't know. I would read this again, and the more I think about it, I really liked it. 5 out of 5. This next story is Come and Get It by Kiley Reid, and I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. This is a character-driven slow burn about a group of students, an RA, and then a journalist, and how their lives kind of intertwine at the University of Arkansas. Now I understand why there's a pig on the front. For the longest time, I was wondering why there's a pig on the cover. This is a multi-POV novel about Millie. She is an RA assistant who wants nothing more than to graduate, buy a home, and just move on. And Agatha is a visiting journalist who comes to talk to students about weddings, but she ends up pivoting to talk to students about money consumption and within college. I really enjoyed Kiley Reid's Such a Fun Age, which was her previous story, and I really liked that story, but this just was a little boring to me. It reminded me a lot of The Idiot by Elif Bachman, but I liked The Idiot more. There's no real plot in this story. I didn't love this book, but I am glad that I read it. It took me back to my time in college when I had all the awkward moments and the good times and the bad times and the times that I never go back to. The next book that I read was The Teacher by Freida McFadden, and I love Freida McFadden. Let me tell you, I am slowly reading through all of her backlogs. I actually enjoy listening to her audiobooks. I usually get them from Libby, and I listen to them while I'm cooking, while I'm sitting around, while I'm at work, and mostly when I'm running. Freida McFadden's books are my running music. I listen to her audiobooks when I run, which I guess is kind of scary because sometimes her stories can be freaky, but I run during the day and I run in safe areas. Safety first. Freida got me again with this book. This is a multi-POV story about a girl named Eve who is married to a man named Nathaniel. Eve is a math teacher at the school, and Nathaniel is a poetry teacher at the same school. And then our third POV is a girl named Addie, and she is a student. Addie gets in some trouble and into some inappropriate relationships at school, and I'm just going to leave it at that. They all have secrets that keep unraveling throughout the story. This was easy to read, fast-paced. It was fun. By the end of it, it was a little predictable, but I still really liked it. I liked how the story ended. I have to say, there were a few ways that Freida could have gone, but I like the lane that she took and how she finished the story. So fun. I gave it a 4 out of 5. This next book that I read is Sugar Baby by Celine Saintclare, and this is an intoxicating debut novel about Agnes, who is a house cleaner, and she is a mixed-race 21-year-old woman who doesn't want to live her life like this. She calls it living in the wasteland. She ends up meeting a girl named Emily who is a model and a sugar baby. This story centers around sugar babies who essentially date rich men and hang out with them just for some money and some gifts and things. Emily invites Agnes to join the world of this high-class sugar baby society. I thoroughly enjoyed this story. The first bit of the story was a little bit boring because we are getting the lay of the land, but by the end of it, it was really good and I couldn't put it down. I gave this book a 4 out of 5. It was a little slow at first, but we quickly dive into the world of escorts, privilege, and the effects of social media and the toxicity that it has on our society. I normally wouldn't have picked this book up, but I decided to get this book because of the cover. It's really pretty. I was incredibly impressed by our author because she has a degree in social anthropology, and she ends up writing a lot of her work and her thoughts and process within this story. And it was just interesting to get her perspective in a contemporary fiction novel. I enjoyed it, and I think everyone should read it. It was good. I promise we're almost done. These last 3 books that I have to share, I did create a vlog for, and it should be up before this goes up. So it should be up by now, and I'll link it right up there or right up there somewhere. I don't know. It's going to be up there. But I read Ali Hazelwood's 3 STEMinist rom-com books, and I loved them so much. This first book ended up being a Kylo and Ren fanfic. I'm not really into that type of Star Wars and that fanfic, but I did like this book. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Olive is our main character. She is a 3rd-year PhD student at Stanford, and she chooses pipettes and Bunsen burners over love to convince her best friend that she is over her ex and she is in a relationship. Olive kisses the first person that she sees, and that person ends up being an advisor in her program named Adam. Kylo. And thus starts the beginning of their fake relationship. This was really cute and easy to read. Not my favorite out of her 3 books, but you'll get more of my thoughts in the vlog if you watch it. The second book is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this so much more. This is about our main character, Bee. She is offered a position to go to NASA for the summer and build fancy helmets for astronauts. She is a neuroengineer. She ends up learning that she'll have to team up with her nemesis from grad school, and his name is Levi. Also looks like Kylo. And this is an enemies to lovers story, and I really enjoyed this book. I ended up with a 5 out of 5 for my very last book for the month of February, and and it was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood, and I loved this book. This is one that I want to own. I want to reread it. I want to listen to it. All of the above. Love Theoretically is about our girl named Elsie, and she is an adjunct professor by day, and then she makes some extra cash at night by fake dating and being like fake girlfriends to dudes. She gets an interview to be a professor at Harvard and also research on the side, which is what she wants to do. She finds out that one of the people interviewing her on that committee is this guy, who is her fake boyfriend's older brother. There's lies, deception, and cute academic rivals to lovers and forced proximity, and I loved this book so much. I really enjoyed the characters and everything about it, but you'll just have to watch the video for more. All right, those are the books that I read for the month of February. Like I said, such a good month. Thank you for sticking around and watching this entire video on all of the books that I read in February. Let me know down below in the comments if you read any of the books that I had talked about, or if you're planning on reading any of the books. I would love to talk about it, and if you have any good recs for March, let me know. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!